Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I've got another Master Duel video for you all today. So today we're coming back to Branded Despia for the first time in I think pretty much a month. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, the last time I covered this deck was for the Season 14 deck profile, and that was just before Sprites came out. So yeah, it's our first time revisiting this deck since the release of Sprites, but if you look at the list, actually, really not that much has changed with it. I actually did go over this list, and I went through a bunch of different lists that have topped since Sprites came out, and, all the data on, like, Master Duel meta, and, top decks from, like, the MCS lately, and all that stuff. And really, when going through that, I found that Branded Despia is actually the meta deck that seems to have changed the least among the new decks that have, or not just among new decks that have come out, but in the face of the new meta. This deck is pretty much largely the same. In fact, I think this main deck is actually the exact same 40 cards I had before Sprite released. And again, that's not for just, booting up the same deck and saying, okay, let's go. Like I said, I really did go through it and be like, is there anything I want to change here? But there really is not. Actually, the main thing I did think about was, and this is going to sound a little bit weird maybe, but I was thinking about dropping the Ash Blossom and Joyous Springs for infinite impermanences. Maybe not even just the full set, but like possibly going down to like 2 Ash Blossom and 1 Imperm, maybe just 41 cards, 2 and 2 of each. Really, this deck is pretty unique in that you don't actually need that much disruption for it. This deck is really all about the gas, right? And I think one of the main reasons that it's about the gas is because when it makes its plays and you have a lot of stuff to work with, the more cards you have to work with, the more advantage rather, you're going to naturally generate through the course of making your plays here. In particular, we're on 3 Aluber and 3 Despain Tragedy still, which definitely seems to be just the way to go, like definitively now, though it's been long enough since Aluber went to 2, right? When Aluber first went to 2, there was kind of some debate of like what the best way to build the deck moving forward is, and I do think that this is probably just the best way to go about it. The one change I thought about making to the main deck, and I'm still actually kind of considering, is dropping the 1 of Springans Kitt for a 1 of Despain Comedy. Let me go ahead and pull that one up here. Despain Comedy, yeah, this is a card that I think with the prevalence of infinite permanence in the metagame is pretty good to have in the deck to fight against, well, obviously those impermanents when they try to target your Lubellion with those. Despain Comedy, for those who aren't aware, the main use of it is to dodge effect negations with Lubellion, potentially among other fusion monsters, but mostly Lubellion. The other really actually nice thing about it is that it does make a really good additional target to send off of the Branded Fusion when you're fusing and you've already used Despain Tragedy's effect during that turn. Because, we've got the 3 Allure, like I said, banishing Despain Tragedy is nice, but then when you go to throw out another Dark Monster for Branded Fusion off, or, for Lubellion, rather, I usually find myself just tossing one of the other copies of Despain Tragedy anyway. Maybe depending on what my hand looks like, I might toss a copy of Edge Imp Chain instead, but suffice it to say, if you've already used Despain Tragedy during your turn, and then you go to use Branded Fusion for Lubellion, there's really not that great of another Dark Monster to send. So Comedy offers that option, and then also offers protection against the monster effect negation that Lubellion might encounter. So definitely thinking of dropping the Springans Kitt for the Despain Comedy there. I think I did actually make a minor change to the main deck. I don't think I had Foolish Burial in before, but I honestly, I gotta be honest, I'm struggling to remember what I had in instead. It might have been like, I don't think it was a 3rd Frightfur Patchwork, but in any case, Foolish Burial is in because, again, we're playing 3 Despain Tragedy, and being able to search Aluber that way is pretty nice, and that's actually another reason, like, to put in Despain Comedy over, like, Springans Kitt is because if you're gonna Foolish Despain Tragedy, then, again, you want something that's gonna be live to send off of the Branded Fusion here. Like I said earlier, the Imperms I really did want to include here. I just ultimately did not have the space. Nibiru does have to stay, Nibiru being our light monster for the Albion here. So Nibiru does have to stay. You could, in theory, use something like Fairy Tale Snow or like an Effect Veiler instead, but yeah, I've said this a lot lately. Even in the face of a Sprite meta, I think Nibiru is still really, really good, and I'm definitely going to continue to include it in my decks moving forward, as I did normally in the past as well. Oh, the extra deck also had a minor change to it. we took out Titaniclad, the Ash Dragon, and put in Mudragon of the Swamp. This is actually because of sprites. This is actually the one change to the deck that we did make in order to fight better against sprites, and that is the inclusion of the Mudragon. And that's pretty much to make Super Poly live, right? The idea, of course, being that we can use Super Poly against, like, our opponent's board of... I'm trying to think, actually, because IP is dark. What attribute is elf? I should know what attribute sprite... Well, I can look over here. I was going to click on a different screen, but... Oh, and of course, elf is a bit too generic. Okay, sprite elf is fire, so... yeah, Mudragon is really mostly just useful for, I guess, sprite elf and then sprite... Oh, actually, you know what? That might not work the way I thought it did. I thought Mudragon would be a little bit better against sprites because they tend to share... I guess red and carrot and elf all share attributes. That's what I was thinking of. I was getting tripped up there because I'm like, wait, blue and jet and pixies are all dark. What about... No, yeah, red, carrot, and elf are all fire, though. So you could super poly those. There are, of course, usually enough dark monsters on the board that you can super... Like, if your opponent had IP and Djinn Buster on the board, you could super poly those as well. The Mudragon basically just gives this Super Poly extra options to be live, and those options can very often be relevant against sprites. So that was the reason to include it over Titaniclad here in the extra deck. But let's see, I'm looking at the list. Is there anything else I really wanted to discuss? I don't know that there is, and this is something where, like, I'm definitely going to ask for a little bit of help from you all in the comments, particularly you all who know Branded Despia fairly well as a deck, because... while I do have a decent amount of experience with the deck, I definitely would not call myself a Branded Despia player. This deck has a hugely high skill ceiling that I'm definitely willing to admit I have not touched yet. So if there are any updates to the build that are better going into this sprite meta, definitely feel free to let me know in the comments. I would definitely be glad to explore some of those tech options. Because I did find, it's funny, I had kind of the opposite experience playing Despia here than I did Sword Soul a few days ago. Sword Soul kind of felt like a slog to play and I wasn't super into it. I was worried the same was going to happen with Despia, but I actually found that Despia not only performs like very well in this meta, I mean, of course it does, but it performs better than I thought it would in this meta, and it's actually still a lot of fun to play. So it's definitely a deck I would be interested in exploring a bit more. But yeah, that's all I have to say about the build for the time being. So let's break the list down card by card, and then we'll go into some games. So we're on 3 Despain Tragedy, 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 3 Edge Imp Chain, 2 Fallen of Albaz, 2 Aluber, the Jester of Despia, 1 Springans Kitt, 1 Dramaturge of Despia, 1 Ad Libitum of Despia, 1 Nibiru, the Primal Being, 2 Polymerization, 1 Foolish Burial, 3 Allure of Darkness, 2 Frightfur Patchwork, let's see, 3 Branded Fusion, 2 Super Polymerization, 2 Clawed by the Grave, 2 Branded Opening, 2 Branded in Red, and then finally 1 Branded Banishment for the main deck. Now for the extra deck, we're on 1 Mudragon of the Swamp, 1 Star Venom Fusion Dragon, 1 Predaplant Dragostepelia, 2 Albion the Branded Dragon, 1 Despain Tragedy, 2 Masquerade the Blazing Dragon, 2 Mirajade the Iceblade Dragon, 2 Libellion the Searing Dragon, 1 Alba Lenatus the Abyss Dragon, and then finally 2 Guardian Chimera. It's going to round out the list. Let's take a look at some gameplay now. Alright, so our first match of this duel is going to be against a stun variant of Runick. And this is going to be yet another great example. Whenever I have games like this, I always keep them. This is going to be a game where our opponent is going to lock us so hard down with floodgates, but it's going to show why perseverance is so important for games like these. So I'm going to start off with a Foolish for Despain Tragedy to go ahead and add the Aluber and get my play started here. I'm of course going to get the Branded Fusion. Having the Branded in red to accompany it definitely feels very good here as well. This is definitely one of those cases where I would have liked to have had Comedy Descend. As you can see, I just sent a second Tragedy here because I already have an Edge Imp Chain in hand. Yeah, if I didn't have the Edge Imp Chain in hand, I might have just sent one of my 3 copies of that instead. But wanted to make sure that we were going to have enough like copies of it to not only play Frightfur Patchwork this turn, but ideally on my next turn as well. So there's a Patchwork for the Poly and the Edge Imp. And then, yeah, because I already have the Branded in red, I'll just set up the Branded Banishment here. I did consider using the Poly. Well, the problem here is I didn't have the Ad Libitum, so Normally, if you have a polymerization with the Mirror Jade, you can make a follow-up play of then fusing with the Ad Libitum and the Mirror Jade to summon either Dragostepelia or Masquerade and then get the Mirror Jade back. But obviously, again, because we had to use the Despain Tragedy to get the Aluber to get our play started, we didn't have a chance to search the, what is it called, the, I just said it, the Ad Libitum. So I'm going to throw out Maxx during the draw phase, still want to be doing that to make sure we play around triple tactics talent. Opponent fires off a runick destruction, I'm going to chain the Branded in red, and I'm just going to go ahead and summon myself a Dragostepelia here. I thought I was going to go for Masquerade, but we will do that, but a little bit later. I want to go for Dragostepelia here to stop a potential Hugin. Also, I see the runick destruction, and it's definitely right to assume, if you see a runick card, that it's runick sprite. Now, that's actually not going to be the case here. Again, this is actually going to be the stun variant. Had I known I was playing against the stun variant for sure, I would have definitely brought out Masquerade here. Masquerade is very good against the stun variant of runick because obviously they need to activate a lot of effects to eventually mill you out. And they're always going to get burned down by the Masquerade. They're going to get taxed out far before they can deck you out. But again, in this scenario, I assumed I was up against runick's sprite, so I went for the Dragostepelia instead here. You could make an argument for the Dragostepelia still being the play here, even if it's against runick stun, because it could still stop the Hugin for Fountain. But of course, once Duality gets played in general, I know I'm up against the stun variant, and then seeing my opponent grab Rivalry there, it's like, and then seeing the other stuff, the runick Allure in particular, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is absolutely the stun variant I'm up against here. Interesting they're on card destruction. I definitely don't mind that, actually. This hand that I'm looking at here is definitely better than the one we had before for this matchup. Now, I know my opponent's got the Rivalry Imp. They're going to flip it up right away. I'm going to chain the Branded Banishment here. The idea is I'm going to try to fuse for a dragon, so that way I can fuse for another dragon to have multiple monsters on board. But the opponent's actually going to also flip up there can be only one. So between there can be only one and Rivalry, that pretty much means both players can only have one monster on the field at a time. Now, the thing is, though, the Branded Banishment actually still gets to resolve here. And the reason that the Branded Banishment gets to resolve is because, you might be thinking, oh, well, there can only be one is already, like, on the board. But the Chain Link hasn't finished resolving yet. And before these effects of these Floodgate cards, these continuous spell and trap cards can apply to the board, the Chain Link has to finish resolving. And since Branded Banishment is part of the Chain Link, I get to fuse into the Masquerade, even though I'm under, there can only be one. And, well, technically I'm not under Rivalry yet, because it hasn't resolved, but even though, again, there can only be one has already resolved on the chain, can still summon the Masquerade in this specific scenario. I see a lot of confusion about the rulings of stuff like there can only be one in Rivalry, like, for example, there can only be one. You might already have like a dragon monster in play, and then you might be wondering, well, why can't I fuse for another dragon using that first dragon as a material? It is because that these cards will check the current condition of the board state, and then say, you can't summon a card of that type. It doesn't matter if that card is going to leave the field, you still control that card, so you can't summon more monsters of that type. That's the way that ruling works, but again, that doesn't apply here, specifically because, well, actually, it doesn't apply here because I went from a plant into a fiend. So that's actually why there can only be one didn't really stop me there. But Rivalry isn't going to stop me because, again, it hasn't finished resolving yet. So it's a whole huge ruling mess that, it's funny, I'll see posts like this sometimes on the Master Duel subreddit where people will say, like, is there a bug in the game? And it's like, no, like 99.9% of the time, it's a weird ruling that, honestly, a good amount of time even I've never heard of. I'm like, I'll see the person post, I'm like, wait, why didn't that work? And then it's like, oh, wait, yeah, because of this obscure ruling. Yeah, unfortunately, the Runick Slumber is going to stop the Masquerade from attacking, but as you can see, the opponent already took like 1,800 points of damage on their turn alone. It doesn't look like they top-decked a relevant Runick card either. Now, if they get, the Flashing Fire and or Freezing Curses, then yeah, that's going to be really bad for me here. It's actually not going to be terrible, though, because I have a Poly, and I have the means to just fuse for another Masquerade. This skill drain, in combination with the Flashing Fire, is definitely going to be bad. At least that's what I thought until my opponent used Flashing Fire to summon Jerry instead of destroy Masquerade. I'm trying to figure out why my opponent would not destroy Masquerade here. I guess it's so I can't just fuse for a different monster, but you already have skill drain up. I don't know, that was weird. I don't, And it could just be that there's something I'm not seeing here, but I don't get why you would, maybe my opponent thought they would get Jerry's effect? Even though they were the ones who activated skill drain, question mark? I don't know. I don't think it was a matter of trying to get Jerry's effect. I think he was just trying to have a... Well, they were at 2100, right? I guess it was a case more of... Yeah, okay, now I'm sorry, that makes a lot more sense than I actually think about this. Because if they had just destroyed my Masquerade, I could just summon a different monster and attack them for a game with that. So, I guess the idea was to get some amount of chump blocker up to stop themselves from losing here. But, again, a little confusing there. There, I really don't see why they didn't destroy Masquerade. Like... I feel like you should want to take the chance that I don't have the ability to summon 2100 points worth of damage rather than just, like, end the turn. Or basically just, you know, commit to not getting rid of the Masquerade here. I'm definitely going to Ash Blossom this Runick Fountain, absolutely, because I'm very confident my opponent doesn't really have anything relevant left. They're going to lose one of the two cards to Card of Demise during the end phase, so they only get to keep one card set here. They actually ended up losing both. Looks like it was... Raw Sphere Mode, and oh, they could have set the Rivalry, they just didn't bother doing it, but... And if you look at this here, I haven't really been paying attention too much to my deck, but this last draw here was actually my last card. My opponent was seriously one card off from actually milling me out before I will move to battle phase here and then smack my opponent directly for lethal. So, there it is, and this is, like I've said, you know, at the start of this game, I really like showing games like this as kind of proof of why you should not just scoop. Like, here's the thing. If you just really don't want to play against Runick Stun that much and you value, like, the time and, I guess, sanity of not playing against them as opposed to trying to play it out and win, then yeah, if you want to auto-scoop, that's valid. But, like, I see a lot of people who... They say they auto-scoop against Runick every time, and they're clearly frustrated that they feel like they have to do that, but you don't. You really don't have to do that. And this game, among multiple, is evidence why. People are going to say, like, oh, this is just one duel where this happened. Like, I wish I could remember specific videos, like... But I do have a lot of other moments throughout this channel playing against Runick Stun. They have multiple floodgates up, and it's just like, alright, I'll sit on this monster and beat, and that does it, that wins. Like, that happens a non-zero amount of the time. It doesn't happen every time, and it doesn't even happen the majority of the time, but I'd say, like, it happens for me probably, like, 30 to 40% of the time. My Stun opponent establishes a bunch of floodgates, I just end up winning by beating them down anyway. And yeah, that's a lot of games to be throwing if you're just auto-scooping against stun decks every single time. They might not be the most fun to play against, but, like, again, if your goal is to climb ladder and do well competitively, then you're going to have to face those stun decks at some point or another, or I guess, you could just not, but at that point, you do have to make up for a loss as well. It's like, how much time are you really saving? I don't know. These are all points I've made before and points I could go on and on about, but... Just wanted to show that this is not an unwinnable matchup. But in any case, we've still got more games to take a look at, so let's go straight into the next one. Alrighty, for this one here, we're going to be up against Live Twin Sprite. So, was a little worried about getting, well, retroactively, I guess thinking about this matchup more like it, I'm a little worried about potentially getting extra deck locked here, but fortunately we can take the first turn, so... And we also opened Aluber and Branded Fusion, so very, very good opening hand. We get to search for the Branded in red here. Opponent's going to chain a Maxx to the Branded Fusion. It's totally fine. I think that's actually a reason why Branded Despia is actually pretty decently well poised in this current meta. Is like, this meta, a lot more than others, is like so centric around Maxx. I mean, every meta in Master Duel has been centered around Maxx, but this one especially, mostly due to like the prevalence of Sprite, not just Sprite's ability to like search it out with Gigantic Sprite or dodge called by with Elf, but just the fact that Sprite really does take like a board break and or a hard stop like Maxx in order to actually keep it from making plays. Like, yeah, just the random disruption like Ash and Imperm is just so much less relevant in this meta. Alright, so the opponent's got an evenly for us here. I'm going to chain Branded in red, though. So this is going to be a much shorter game than the last one I showed. But this interaction is actually the main reason that I wanted to show it, because this is something that I have... Not only a play that I've made as the Branded Despia player before, but I've also seen people misplay this when I've played Evenly match. I remember when I was testing Evenly in Pure Sprites, I actually had a game in testing where I evenly'd my Branded Despia opponent's board. Like, it was pretty much this exact same situation. And my opponent opted to just banish all of their face-down cards, including the Branded in red, and just keep their Mirror Jade, which they definitely should not have done. They could have done a lot better, and I'll show you how here. So when my opponent activates Evenly, I'm going to chain the Branded in red here. And I'm definitely going to make sure that I use this Ad Libitum as a material. Specifically with the Mirror Jade. I want to fuse the Ad Libitum and the Mirror Jade here. That'll let me go for a... You could go for Dragostepelia or for the... what is the other one? Masquerade. You could get either or here. It doesn't matter. But long story short, I want to use the Branded in red to fusion summon in response to the Evenly. Now, Evenly will resolve, and all these cards will go away. Then my Ad Libitum is actually going to activate on an entirely separate chain link, because unlike a game like Magic the Gathering, chain links in Yu-Gi-Oh! Cannot be interrupted. You have to fully resolve the chain link, and then any effects that are triggered to activate as a result of the resolution of that chain link, those go on a separate chain link. So now that Evenly Match is no longer applying, Ad Libitum is going to resolve and bring back my Mirror Jade. So here you can see I have not only managed to dodge my opponent's Evenly with the Mirror Jade, but I even refreshed it and managed to get it live once again. My Mirror Jade can now use this effect again. And I also have the Dragostepelia as well. So yeah, I think my opponent's going to concede like literally right after I do this, but I wanted to make sure I showed this because I think this is a very important interaction to show here. It's not one that's going to come up like every single time, but it's very important to, in general, keep in mind of when effects are going to like go on a separate chain link and how that will affect the board state. Always important to keep stuff like that in mind. So yeah, like I thought the opponent's just going to immediately concede right after I do that. So yeah, like I said, short, sweet game there, just to show off exactly yeah, how good Branded in red and Ad Libitum are more than anything else, but also how good it can be to play into your effects that again activate on a separate chain there. But we still got some more games to look at. Let's go straight to the next one here. Alright, this duel is going to be against a mathmech Salamangreat variant. I actually don't think we're going to see too much of the Salamangreat stuff. I think while I was playing this game, I just assumed they were on pure mathmech from how they played, but got another fantastic opening hand here. I will admit, I got really lucky in this play session, not only with like coin flips, but also just opening really, really well. That might have been why I had such a positive experience playing Branded Despia, I fully admit, but the deck is still, of course, very, very good in its own right. This hand in particular is just such an example of like how much advantage rather this deck can generate. Like, look at this. We've only played a couple of cards and we're already up to 7 cards in our hand on turn 1. It's frankly kind of ridiculous. So gonna play the Branded Fusion. Once again, our opponent's got Maxx, but once again, I'm not really planning on summoning more than like 2 times here. So it's really nice to be able to play a deck that's not really strong, but just doesn't care about Maxx. It's actually, I think about getting back into Flanders again, because it's been so long since I've played it, and also for like literally that exact same reason I just said. It's really nice playing a deck that is not only strong, but can also play very easily around Maxx. So this is another little play that I wanted to show off here, because I don't know if everybody knows about it, but if your opponent goes to Imperm the Lubellion and you have Branded in red, you can actually use it to dodge the Imperm, and you'll still get to search a Branded in red later in the turn off of an Albion sent off Mirror Jade. So you don't have to worry about like wasting your Branded in red by doing this. So the opponent's going to Imperm, obviously targeting the Lubellion. I'm going to chain the Branded in red, get back Despain Tragedy, and I'm then going to fuse using the Lubellion and the Despain Tragedy. I believe I go for Dragostepelia here. Yep. Generally speaking, if I don't know what I'm up against, I'll just go for Dragostepelia, just because the monster effect negate, I think, is better than having just one taxman out. The exception would be, of course, like I said earlier in the video, something like Runick Stun. I would definitely rather have a taxman than a Dragostepelia, so. Alright, sorry. I think I have an alarm that's about to go off. I just want to make sure that doesn't go off mid-video here. Glad I thought about that when I did. But yeah, like I said, Dragostepelia tends to be better blind most of the time. But you can make an argument for Masquerade. I think either is fine here. Alright, sorry about that. So, opponent's going to draw. Going to get my Mirror Jade. They'll get another draw here. Yeah, I did actually end up giving them one more draw than I thought I would because I ended up going for the Dragostepelia, but my opponent also tossed out a card from their hand. This, very pretty, by the way, this Infinite Impermanence. So, I'm actually totally fine with that. My opponent's not going to end up net gaining any more advantage than they would have normally, and then now I just get an additional Dragostepelia on the field. So, that Imperm, not only did that Imperm not go the way they wanted to, in a way, it actually, my board is better because they tried to Imperm me. Not in a way, it is. My board is actually just better than if they had tried to Imperm me. So they're going to start off with a Circular. I'm going to chain the Mirror Jade in response. I've had people ask before, obviously more in the past, of when I was playing mathmech a bit more often. We will see mathmech again very soon, don't worry. But I've had people ask, like, what is the choke point against mathmech? One of the main ones I like to hit, especially on turn 2, is just getting their Circular off the board as soon as possible. If you can just get it off the board before your opponent gets a chance to play a card, then obviously you deny them the super factorial draw if you do that on turn 1, but mostly on turn 2 I want to deny them as many bodies as possible. I want it to be as hard for them to OTK as possible. Granted, they did have another Circular to just normal summon here, but that's actually totally fine with me. It means I can't normal summon Diameter, which would have been a much better normal summon here. So, plus I get to just negate the Circular anyway. Because at the rate my opponent is currently playing, they'll be able to access code OTK, but not with the update jammer. So here they actually do have the microcoder. Unfortunately for them, that's not going to allow them to go into update jammer necessarily here, because they still need 2 level 4 lower Cyber monsters. Although I just realized they searched Signet mining. They could have activated that here for like addition or subtraction, specialed it, and then use that in Circular. Oh no, you know what? They could have, because they don't have. This actually is something that's happened to me quite a bit in playing mathmech, is that they actually don't have a zone open. If you look here, the transcode talker is pointing straight down, but Splash Mage only points diagonally. This is a I don't know if my opponent necessarily misplayed here. This might have been the only play they could really make, but I've made a misplay before where I didn't have space to play the update jammer because, again, I don't have a zone that Splash Mage is pointing to it. But looks like they're going to do a decode or a transcode plus a decode talker heat soul here instead. I'll let them battle over the Dragostepelia here. They only get 1 attack because of the, what do you call it? The, why can't I think of that card's name? Oh, the Circular, yeah. Circular, if you use this effect, you can only attack with 1 monster during that turn. So, now they're going to go for access code. I'm assuming, obviously, to blow up my board here. I'm just going to Nibiru, though. I'd rather keep this Branded Banishment. I don't care about losing the Mirror Jade, but I would definitely want this Branded Banishment moving forward. Although, I don't really think it's going to matter here. It also doesn't matter at all that this Albion Search is getting Ash Blossomed. I don't care in the slightest. Because between what I already have in hand, between the Patchwork Poly and Ad Libitum, I think, yeah, I'm already good here. And then Aluber is just like the icing on the cake. I'm a little bit weary of my opponent's back row. I just want to make sure that's taken care of before I try to go for lethal here. So I'm going to summon the Aluber for the Branded Fusion. Then I'm just going to go for Guardian Chimera. Specifically using 2 monsters on the field to make sure I blow up both the token and my opponent's face down card. And then, of course, I get the draw and to resummon the Mirror Jade here as well. Yeah, they flip up a Crossout Desginator, but I'm like, there's nothing they're going to call that's relevant. And they just end up calling Call by the Grave. Which I guess isn't a bad call now that I think about it, to call by the Grave if you're my opponent in this situation, because if that's what, I have this card here and I don't kill you this turn, then I probably kill you with the Call by the Grave. I actually was not expecting the Ash Blossom on the Branded Fusion here, because when I went to activate both Aluber and Frightfur Patchwork, my opponent was given, priority was not passed to them at all. They were given no prompt to respond. So they actually held the toggle off and then switched it back to on or auto for the Ash Blossom. Good play on my opponent's part, but unfortunately not going to be enough as we're able to Branded Banishment for the Dragostepelia back and then smack him for lethal there. We do actually have one more duel to watch before we end off, so let's go straight into this last one here. And our last opponent for this video is going to be Adventure Phantom Knight, Adventure PK, which is, wow. I couldn't even tell you the last time I went up against this deck. I literally couldn't at all. Like, it's kind of wild, but yeah, we yet again not only went first, but opened a very, very busted hand here. I'm telling you, this session was great for Branded Despia hands. But, you know, I mean, obviously winning this many coin flips was luck, but there is something to be said about the consistency of a deck, and I can definitely see, because beforehand I would see like a lot of Branded Despia decks like drop stuff like Ash Blossoms altogether, and sometimes even Maxx as well. I've seen like all gas, no like disruption Branded Despia, and beforehand when I would look at that, I'm like, really? Like, what are you gonna do like at all going second, or just like in general? But I can definitely see the appeal, just because, again, when your hand is all gas as Branded Despia, as we've seen during pretty much all of these duels here, you just have so many options and you gain so much advantage that I could almost see the argument that you don't need the disruption to stop your opponent's plays when you have the gas to just play through them anyway. So yeah, my opponent's got a Ghost Ogre here for the Mirror Jade, which is kind of annoying, but it's really not that big of a deal. Because we have the Polymerization and the Ad Libitum, I can just make a Masquerade here. I have to make Masquerade here because we're fusing Edge Imp Chain and Ad Libitum specifically. So no option to make Dragostepelia this time. But that's going to let us bring the Mirror Jade back, and then we can pass back. To be fair, I probably would have made this play anyway and just gone for Dragostepelia instead, but it just happened to work out this way that our opponent had a counter for us and we were able to play around it there. So that's another win for us there. Another good example of Branded Despia just playing into the disruption and just having so much gas that they can just like, we can just afford to play into it, not even worry about it. That's, again, one of the many reasons why I say like, hey, maybe the no hand trap all gas version of this build is more than just a meme. Maybe it's actually like really good. But anyway, so there are those games. Thank you all for watching them. Now let's move on to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now, so without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.